Welcome everyone. My name is Ricardo Mesquita. I'm the head of innovation at the Nova School of Business and Economics, where we are right now in Carcavelos, very close to Lisbon. And with me is Ricardo Marvão, co-founder of BTI, and will be your hosts for the evening. You're in for a treat. We have three speakers from three of the top business schools in Europe that will be addressing space as the new frontier. Before we start, I just wanted to go through some quick points. So the masterclass is being recorded, so you'll be able to see it at the end in case you've missed anything. Also, if you're interested in the Space for Business program, please go into spaceforbusiness.eu, or you should scan the QR code that you see on the screen so you get more information. Also, if you have questions for our speakers, please use the Q&A pool and not the live chat. So please use the Q&A pool and not the live chat. And before we start and we get into, perhaps we can see the agenda real quick. So we'll do a brief intro, then we'll move on and talk to Andreas Whitmer from the University of St. Gallen, followed by Miguel Pinecunha from Nova SPE, and we will finish with Fernand Jaspers from the Rotterdam School of Management, and they will be addressing each one of them a different topic. We'll have hopefully some time at the end for a quick Q&A and close it. We'll pick some of the questions and done by the audience, okay? But before we start, I just wanted to pick your brain, Ricardo, on some of the context of space and what brought us here, and why is it such a huge opportunity today, so that everyone gets to know a little bit more.
Thanks, Ricardo, and we're both Ricardos, by the way. It's funny to be here. By the way, really happy to be here. This is an amazing program, and especially because space has evolved so much in the last 10 years. The last decade has been amazing, especially in the private space market. The evolution that we've seen on technology and the number of companies on the private sector that has appeared has been phenomenal. Even yesterday, I mean, things that happen. Even yesterday, SpaceX launched the first orbital flight for non-professional astronauts.
Very true.
Yeah. And it's amazing to see this. And so I think, like we say here at the Space for Business program, it's important to see that the next space technology that will be uncovered and discovered and developed will need to deliver the global internet, will need to fight climate change, and will probably take humanity to Mars. And so all those are huge challenges, and there will be a lot more. And I think what this program really brings is really the perspective on the business side. And I think there's so much to be done. I mean, the engineering part has been done for so many years, so many decades. Now it's the business part that needs to be really undertook. And I think if we look in the last, especially in the US, there's been a lot of new technologies that has appeared. Europe is starting to pick up, and we have an amazing opportunity now in Europe to really take care of, there's a fly here. Let's kill the fly. Yeah, space tech for killing flies. But so that's it. I mean, there's an amazing opportunity here, and I think you guys should really take it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Ricardo. And without further ado, I mean, we'll go straight into Andreas Whitmer, who's the responsible for the Center of Aviation Competence at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. Andreas, thank you for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. And Ricardo, very nice to see you here today in this nice studio where you are. I'm just setting up my slides. I think you should see the slides now in the correct mode. Is that correct? You have a good picture. So I'm going to talk a bit about the next 10-15 minutes about what we are going to focus on at the University of St. Gallen as part of the Space for Business program. So we will be responsible in this in our module to give an introduction to the space system, to how space works, and we will be also responsible for giving an introduction to space markets, up and downstream markets, and into business model innovation. So we're going to talk a bit about how we can create new business models, how we can put business model into the next gears, and also why business models are actually important for us. So let me talk a bit about these topics during the next minutes, starting with maybe a bit of a trigger. You see a cockpit of a space shuttle here. Obviously, when you look at this, it looks great and fancy, and the view to the world. But what I also see as a management scholar is complexity. I see, let's say, a system here. I see a complicated cockpit with a lot of buttons and a lot of probably knowledge one has to have to actually steer it, to involve with it. And I take this as a metaphor for also explaining why we need systems and models to actually make complexity, which we have in management, simpler. And that's why we talk a bit about this kind of systematic approach and the space system, as I call it. But complexity, what is complexity and what is complicated? For example, is a rocket or an airplane, is it complicated or is it complex? Is it a complex system? These two words, but they have a completely different meaning. Let me give you some answers, because I think it's important to understand what I mean here. When we talk about complex and complexity, it's not 100% under control. It's not 100% predictable. It's dynamic. It's according to the Pareto principle, like it works according to the 80-20 rule. For example, a combination of humans and a cockpit, as we have seen on that picture before, there you have probably some complexity because you have an interface between human and machine. Or if you think about weather and predictability and all that, then you would also say, well, it's never 100% sure. Or if you think of management and people, and if you steer a team or an organization, it's never 100%, right? And if you have kids yourself, and maybe you have a daughter like me as a teenager, then you probably understand what I mean, that you never understand 100% what is going on. And you're trying to do your best and influence, and you work according to certain, like the Pareto principle. So complex means we are not 100% under control. But then on the other side, we have complicated. And complicated means 100% under control, 100% predictable, 100% classified. The Pareto principle, like the 80-20 rule, does not hold. And that's when you think about technical products like a rocket, like cars, like other technical equipments, robots, planes. For example, if you have a car, you of course expect that when you push the brake in the car, that it will break down 100% of all cases. An 80-20 rule doesn't work. You cannot live with it that only in 80% of all cases the brakes work. So we have complicated systems that really have to work 100%. And if they don't, and that's the example of, for example, the Boeing 737 MAX 8, remember those two accidents? That's where we had a case where the complicated system was not tested and put to the level where it actually was 100%. So complexity is always when we are not 100%. And to make this complexity simpler, to actually be able to manage complexity and to deal with complexity, we are thinking of models and systems and try to create this kind of simplification of complex situations. So we need models to simplify complexity, and that's why we are always thinking in models in management. We have a lot of management models. Business models are just some models, but there's strategy models. There's models about everything. And when we talk about models where we have a lot of interrelations, where we have kind of networks behind, where we have kind of connectivity, and we have kind of systems where we have impacts, when some parts of a system impact another part, then it becomes even more complex. And that's when we generally talk about systems and also systemic management, when we manage these systems. So when I talk about the space system, I talk about the very complex system from a market or industry level perspective. That's what you see on the top here. In the middle, you see an organization or management level system. So there is also models that are on the organizational level. And try to explain how organizations work, because you have complexity there, and also try to simplify this to be able to steer it on an 80-20 kind of level. And then there is a strategic planning level where you get into really planning an organization. And that's where you have some tactical issues coming up and become important. And that's when we talk a lot about like models, such as in this example, an example of a business model. But let me just explain the space system as we understand it. We have some surrounding subsystems, you could say, or environments. And the market is embedded in these environments. And such an environment is, for example, the social environment, the society. Then we have the economy, we have the technology, the innovation, we have the environment itself, I mean, the ecology, what the impacts we have on the environment. And we have a political system, we have politics. And these subsystems or environments, they are kind of building a framework or the plate on which a market with its stakeholders functions. And that's why we have some interference there on the market. And we need to understand those to then understand the market, and then to deep dive into the market and try to understand, well, how does supply in the market work and how does demand in the market work? Now, in the demand, and this is now really simplified, there may be certain different kind of users. You may have private or business users. You might have space science as an interesting group in the demand system, or you may have governments, public institutions, and you may have more. And on the other side, you have some kind of a supply network. And I like to explain it as a supply network. That's why I also drew it as a network, because we talked a lot about supply chains. And I think to talk about supply chains is what we did historically. But I think we should talk much more about supply systems, about supply networks, about the combination of together producing a final product. It's less a sequence, but maybe a common together. Having this kind of mindset puts you into this thinking of a supply network or supply system where you have different issues included, different industries like spaceports or satellite navigation, or the regulators are part of it. You even have consultants as a part of it. You may have a lot of different service providers and productions in that supply system. Right? The regulators obviously are very much linked to the political system in the end. And in some models, you would see that you would take the regulation also as kind of a system or a subsystem, an environment that is around the market. But I think we have to think of regulators as being part of the game, not as outsiders. Of course, they create regulations, but the regulations are not really created by regulators, but by the political system. At least in democracies, we have a political system that creates what the regulators then have to control and implement. And that's why I put them into the supply system. But this model is something which we're going to deep dive on in one of our modules in St. Gallen, where we try to learn how this works. Now, when we do this, we of course go a step further from that and say, okay, when we go into the supply, what kind of markets do we have, and what are new markets, what are new opportunities in the market? And then when we do this, we also ask ourselves, how can we then in these markets become successful? Let's say you may have an organization that thinks of entering the space industry. You may have a startup coming into the space industry. You may have a company in the space industry that wants to develop some new product, moves into the new economy of space and develops the business model. So you need innovation in business models, you need new business models, you need to think about how you're actually getting to the level of where you create value, not only for the company, but also for the society or the market in the end. And that's where we talk about business models. So what is a business model? A business model describes how the pieces of a business fit together. Or it is a system which shows relevant factors defining value creators. You can see that in different models. I'm going to just show two a bit later on today. but you find quite a few different authors that have created business models and frameworks to simplify, let's say, the complexity of all the factors that play a role, for example, in the case of a business model. Basically, what we have at hand, and that's why we need business models, is we have at hand technology innovation, and that's the foundation. I mean, we have technology is developing, and Ricardo, I said it in the beginning very nicely, we have been a lot of, we developed, the society developed a lot of innovation and developed a lot of technology in the past, but we need to move further and put it into business. And we have to accelerate it by giving it the right business model that enables the full market potential in the end. And that's why we need to talk about business models in depth. And that's what we also will do in St. Gallen. When we think of business models and put them in place, there is often a confusion between what is a business model and what is maybe a strategy. Obviously, if you look at an organization, you have a normative level. And on a normative level, it's about the legitimation of the company. It's the vision, maybe the mission, the ethics of an organization. On a strategic level, you create and maintain sustainable success or a successful position. So we develop a strategy. On a business model level, it's more a combination of, let's say, taking strategy into account and also tactical issues or scenarios to then create and capture value. And on an operative level, you would have operative process control. So you would have the development of plans, budgets, processes, and structures. If you look at that from an organizational perspective, you would have a strategic layer, and then you would have a tactical layer, and in the middle, you have this configuration level, which is kind of the business model level, combining strategic views and goals with tactical kind of how-to-dos in practice. So models that have been published by different authors are, for example, this one. I like this one because it is quite simple, and it comes from let's say, the authors of the book are technology managers. They came out of technology companies and went into management research. And they just raised a few questions and said, well, when we talk about business models and define them, we should answer some questions. And basic questions are, what do you offer to the customer? What is actually the value proposition? How is the value proposition really created? And then that would link to the value chain. Who is your target customer? Who is actually the segment? And how is the revenue really created, which is about the revenue model. So to whom do we give what, and what is the return we get from the market for it? That's basically as simple as it sounds, but if you go into detail and analyze and go into detail of these questions, you may figure out that it is actually quite complicated to answer these questions. Another, and maybe the most famous framework for business models in the market is the model by Osterwalder. He defined 9 factors in his canvas, and he uses the canvas with the 9 factors to define, again, what the value is, what the value is for customers, for the market, for which market, for whom, and how the revenue can be captured, on the other hand, for the organization. So by this, let me jump over and just have a couple of minutes on the new space economy and new space markets, because what we do here, when we talk about the aviation, the space system, and when we talk about the business models, of course, we want to apply this and think in terms of the new space economy and new space markets. But what are then new space markets, and what is the new space economy? New space economy, it's shown here. You can see there are primary business-to-business business models. There are business-to-consumer markets or business models. There is a short and a long-term implementation time span shown here on this graph. And you can see these bigger bubbles, which show a little bit in what areas different developments have happened and still will happen. A fancy one on the bottom, space tourism. or then maybe ground equipment, or satellite services, or national security, or satellite manufacturing, or energy mining. Very interesting one, new energy from space, for example. And so we have the launch industry and demand and robotic space science and exploration. So you find a lot of discussion on these different areas of development in this new space economy in literature, and we're going to discuss and figure out, and you're going to figure out maybe for you yourself, where do you fit and where do you have an opportunity on the knowledge, on the basis of your competencies to actually get in and develop maybe some products or contribute to some products in a new space market for you. Another graph about the new space business opportunities shows on the right side, especially some kind of emerging opportunities. I think Ricardo has mentioned it also. Maybe humans want to travel to space, to wherever, to Mars, as a goal in some place. But also this very interesting topic about energy from space. Very, very interesting topic, as we face an energy challenge on the globe, and there is opportunities to get in, and this opportunity will result in a lot of opportunity for many, many companies in the future. But then we have also the established markets on the left side, traditional space, which is institutional space and commercial space, where there are launchers, there are satellites. I mean, what we basically know today. And some new space services may be also important. New space services with commercialization potential are also given. And I think this is just, let's say, these are just some ideas, but I guess there is more to come, and there is innovation to come, and I believe there is an opportunity in that new space market. Last but not least, when we talk about up and downstream market, what are we talking about? Upstream markets are the markets from R&D to manufacturing of traditional space. On space products like mission control centers, there's launch vehicles, there's different satellites. That is when we talk about upstream. And when we talk about downstream, then we have first ground operations. That means we have some mission control and satellite control and network operators and launch operations. This is still also very present today. But when we look at value-added services, these value-added services, then it becomes interesting, because there seem to be a lot of opportunities coming up and ideas of how to develop into the future. And I think there is a lot of opportunity for many markets and for many organizations nowadays in this area. By this, I have done my short tour through my slides. I thank you very much. I hope you have some takeaways from this short input, and I hope I kept time more or less. I hand back to the colleagues at Nova in Lisbon, to Ricardo. Thank you.
All right, Andy, thank you so much for your presentation. I mean, I just love the opportunities that are showing, just through the last slide, upstream and downstream. I mean, even if you're not, you know, even if you're not today in the space business, I mean, maybe you're developing textile that can be used out there, or you're contributing to the agrotech development there. I mean, what do you think? What
and I mean, also because what we saw before was how the public space was actually evolving. Today with private space, it goes a lot faster. You use methodologies from the startups, you're a lot leaner, faster, you present technologies, you test, you go to the market very quickly. And especially in the downstream, like Andres was saying, I mean, there's so many opportunities on energy, on healthcare, on fishing. There's so many things happening, and this space technology will open our eyes to new ways of actually creating new business models. So I think this is an amazing. Thanks, Andreas, for the presentation.
All right. Thank you. So without further ado, Andreas, thank you. We'll present our next speaker, Miguel Pinecunha. Miguel is going to share with us a very personal journey on the new frontier of management and organizations, obviously focusing on space. So we'll leave the floor to Miguel. We'll be back in a moment.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to explain my personal journey in this new field of new space and the new frontier in management and organization studies. Let me clarify one thing. I know nothing about technology. I was trained as a psychologist, then I did a PhD in management, and I'm fascinated by the new space. And the question is why? Because I think that in terms of management and organization theory, I think that this is a really exciting moment to start exploring the new space. So I'm not going to give you any. I will not map the territory of new space as Andy did it for me. So thank you very much, Andy. I'm going to give you some notes on my personal interest for space. So. What's there for people working in management and organization studies? I think that this is a very interesting time to start exploring this new domain, because among other things, it's a new territory, meaning that the research in management and organization studies is still very limited, but as you will see, in my understanding, it's a very interesting domain for a number of reasons. So. My interest for this area of new space consists in trying to explore the new space industry or domain with the lenses of management and organization studies. And I think that there's a lot of value in this exploration, because if we think about technology, there's an element in technology that is closer to engineering, but also we need to be able to translate technology into new domains like markets, as Andy was saying, business models, consumers, how can we understand our customer, etc. So I really think that there's a lot of need and value in trying to apply the concepts of new space of management theory to the new space. In this sense, you know, as a thought experiment, I think that maybe we can think about this domain as a case in international business, like a new domain. So instead of just exporting to other places, think about the new space as a new market, which is big, as you can imagine, and totally new. So there are a number of challenges that are super interesting, and I think that that's the reason why I'm interested in the new space. I'll give you some notions about or some reasons, some personal reasons why I think that the new space is interesting from the perspective of management and organizational research. One, I think that a number of reasons, and Andy mentioned some of them, turn the new space into a very interesting theoretical domain. Like, for example, there's this idea, I do more qualitative research, and some cases are interesting in terms of research because they have extreme qualities. And by extreme, I mean, they render some phenomena transparently visible. And I think that the new space is very extreme in a number of dimensions. So if you think about risk, you know, starting new ventures is always risky. So think about starting new ventures in space. Scale. I think that as we understand, scale is changing, but scale is a very important topic in the new space. And by scale, I mean not only scale as we normally see it, but also temporal scales. And for reasons that I'll explain next, I think that the new space will help us reinvent the meaning, for example, of the time scale of conducting innovations in this new domain. And uncertainty. Uncertainty is one of the core concepts in management research, and certainly it gains a new meaning when we talk about new space, because, you know, some markets are already understood, but that's not definitely the case of the new space. So I think that for those of us interested in exploring new theorizing in management and organization studies, I think that the space is very ample, and also in terms of policy changes. A number of areas have been studied, namely, for example, in terms of law. But when it comes to management, I think that policy recommendations are hardly needed. And it's not only a matter of doing research, but also translating this research into policy. So I think that the impact of new space will be very visible and very important in different domains like strategy, like leadership, like operations, logistics, etc. And in this sense, I think that as a multidisciplinary field, the new space is full of potential. Also, in terms of stimulating intellectual possibilities, I think that because everything is new, there's a lot of territory to apply our management theories to the new space. And in this sense, I think that we can build a completely new research agenda with the theories we have, and we can try to transfer some of these ideas to the new space industry. I'll give you some examples of a possible research agenda, including some of the topics in which I'm interested myself. So, as Andy discussed previously, when I talk to people in the field, people coming from a scientific or engineering background, one need that is very visible is the need to develop new business models. And the idea is that we have business models that work quite well in established industries, but now imagine that in industries that are new, emerging, potentially huge, the question is how can we develop business models that will help us understand the business case in new space. So I think this is one of the topics that will certainly deserve the contribution of management and organizational scholars. Another domain which is very interesting, and I'm trying to explore it myself, refers to co-opetition. Co-opetition is this combination of competition and collaboration. It's a process that has been explored in a number of industries, namely the industries in which research and development is big and risky. So think about, for example, projects like the COVID-19 vaccine in the pharmaceutical industry. But now I think that if we want to take co-opetition to the next level, we can think about the space industry. So not only because of scale, but because of the collaboration between governments and businesses, I think that the opportunities to explore co-opetition in inter-organizational networks will be very rewarding in the case of new space. I'm a paradox scholar myself, so I tend to see or to look at organizations or study organizations with a paradox lens. Paradox refers to the coexistence of interdependent but opposite processes. So think about the role of paradox theory in the new space. I think that, for example, and Ricardo was mentioning this before, because new space refers to the application of some organizational and management processes to the new space. So think about agile or lean. Certainly, we need to develop agile approaches in new space, but then we have the other side. How far can we go in terms of risk? How fast can we go? And I think that paradox theory can be used to inform the kinds of tensions that will be present in new space ventures. Another example is safety risk. So how can we integrate these two tensions and create an understanding of the new space from a management perspective that can benefit from organization theory. Another possibility refers to micro-macro linkages. Also, my other colleague Ricardo pointed out the case of for example, precision agriculture. And I think that it can be extremely interesting to explore through the lens of new space how micro and macro can be articulated so that we develop an understanding of challenges that will allow us to see a number of problems from the perspective from a macroscopic perspective, like the one that can be offered by new space technologies, but also with connections to the ground, like the people who do farming, namely in poor areas. So how can we help these people to develop more fertile lands, more productive crops, while at the same time supporting sustainability? So I think that micro-macro linkages can benefit significantly from our understanding of new space. And the same is valid, for example, to the connection between international business. So how can we look at business from an international perspective in articulation with, for example, international management or the role of international institutions in the governance of work. To cut a long story short, let me just briefly mention this project I'm trying to complete. Think about sustainability. I think that some of the difficulties with the implementation or the tackling of sustainable development goals have to do with scale. And again, I think that zooming in and zooming out with traditional qualitative organizational approaches and the big data or the hard data that we can collect through, for example, Earth observation methods can allow us to integrate micro and macro in ways that can be potential revolutionary. So I think that these are possible topics for a research agenda. You can think about your own topics. So just to finish, and I hope that I'm expressing my excitement about this new field. I think that the field is very fertile in research opportunities, but I think that as a new area of study, we can think about the new space as a terrain that can benefit from our knowledge in terms of strategy, operations, finance, etc. So lots of opportunities there. I think that there's need to incorporate the new space in the research agendas in management and organization studies. And that's part of the goal of this program, not only the executive education, but also triggering and stimulating research on new space from the perspective of management and organization studies. And finally, adopting and adapting the knowledge that we already have in management and organization theories to this field that will certainly share some characteristics, but that will certainly stimulate us to think in a fresh way about some of our theories and even to recreate some of the theories considering the challenges posed by these new settings. So I think that I will not say nothing wrong if I make this prediction that 10 years from now, some of the topics I'm mentioning here will be normal in management and organization studies, and I'm planning to be myself part of this journey. So I hope that you can join us and that you also participate in this cross-fertilization between technology, engineering, new space, and management and organization studies. That's our invitation.
All right, everyone, so we're back. Thank you, Miguel, for your contribution. So, I mean, my personal takeaway, and before we leave the floor to Ferdinand, our last speaker, is a very personal one. I think that, you know, the interest in space, which, you know, a lot of us share, two of us for sure, has never been so approachable. So you can just take a deep dive and learn more and try to embrace the opportunity to create a new business model. With space as a new frontier, a new realm of business, right? And I think that the enablers maybe 10, 15 years ago were not there as much as they are today. So startups are growing, and they're being able to, you know, just the low orbit satellites or the smaller, not everyone can do it, as you were saying it before, but I mean, it's impressive. So I think that the incentive is for anyone with the curiosity and the ambition to learn more to just jump in and get to know space better.
Even, I mean, one of the things that Miguel was saying that I find very intriguing is also doing the research and the study is very important, because like these people that want to do another business and use that business model or that research or that study can replicate easier and can go to the market faster and can present to the final client in a much better way. And so it's like lessons learned, and you pick those things up and you go a lot faster to the market. So I think this makes a lot of sense, and space needs that. So yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so thank you for staying with us. We're on our way to the very last and not least speaker that is coming from the Rotterdam School of Management. Ferdinand Jaspers is going to talk to us about scale-ups and innovation within the space industry. Without further ado, Ferdinand, the floor is yours. Good luck.
Yeah, so let me just share the slides with you. So I think I'm you can all hear me, and also the slides are visible. So good evening, everyone. Welcome also on my behalf, presenting here from Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And yeah, it was a great pleasure talking to you from the office about innovation in the space industry, and also about scaling up with your opportunity, with your startup in that environment. And also about myself, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an expert in the space industry, but I believe from experience actually in coaching and working with countless startups, scale-ups, that we have as management and business scholars, we have something to offer that's definitely valuable for you in your particular setting, you as experts from your particular field. And yeah, just listening to the previous speakers, I think I can add a couple of things. I will show you a couple of things, we'll explain a couple of things, but I definitely hope that this will also set us up for some nice Q&A in the last part of this webinar. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A part. And Ricardo, if you feel there's an opportunity to just interrupt me, then please do so. And I'm more than happy to take questions on the go from the audience. And at the end, I hope we can just smoothly transition to maybe a Q&A with everyone. But maybe just a few things to get us going about myself and also the business school that I'm working for, Rotterdam School of Management. And in particular also in the sense of the program that we're developing and starting with the group here. Also the Erasmus Center for Entrepreneurship, which is a spin-off from the business school. And as you see reflected in the picture, as really, let's say, from the traditional university or business school, the spin-off to create an environment of entrepreneurship, where we welcome startups, ambitious people, and where we help you to disrupt, if needed, the status quo. And yeah, maybe this is also your setting. Maybe you have some traditional organizations, you want to speed up things, disrupt things, get some new things off of the ground. And yeah, just let me show you a couple of things, how we think about starting businesses, scaling businesses, what we've learned from our research, and how we can help you out perhaps in this program with also the real life challenges that we will help you to develop for yourself, and how we can help you develop that to make impact in reality. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them. But as a starting point, I really would like to ask a short question to you, to think about the criteria of what actually makes a great idea. So maybe you are all thinking of maybe opportunities to start your business, but maybe you're not really sure whether you want to launch your company, or maybe you are already developing a new initiative. Then actually, this is a useful question to start off with. What is it that that makes an idea a good idea? So why don't we give that a thought? Feel free to maybe drop something in the Q&A environment, or I don't know where exactly, but just at least give it a thought. So, and that's fine. I don't see any contributions yet, because maybe we're not sure if this is in the chat or in the Q&A area. But I think what's important is that I've triggered you. I approached you directly, asked you a question, and I'm sure you went through some ideas about what makes a great idea. So let me just show you a couple of things that are important. First of all, any startup idea has to meet the criterion of it being desirable. So, for who actually are we solving a problem? So who are we targeting? Who is the customer? What are their needs? And how are we going to, provide a good solution to that? And what is this solution? So this really goes directly into some of the things that also Andreas presented as being a key part of a business model. And the second thing is that maybe something is desirable, but doesn't really mean that it's also feasible, that you can, that the technology is ready, that you have the right team for it, that you have the budget. So this will be a second overall criterion. And the third one is then about viability. So maybe the first two criteria are met, but doesn't really mean that you have a viable business model in the sense that you will be able to recoup the investments and also that it will be profitable at the end of the day at a sufficient level. And I think in a broader definition of viability, we can and should actually definitely involve societal impact. So viability from also an environmental point of view or a social point of view. And there I think space technology, space capabilities can definitely contribute to the challenges that we're facing on the Earth. Especially, I think, Ricardo, you mentioned in the Q&A in between, or in the reflection in between, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. So it would be really nice as we'll be working together in the program to consider those goals and to meet societal impact criteria. And maybe finally, because maybe you're asking, scalability. We're talking about scale-ups. So a fourth criterion actually would be how can we make an idea or a startup scalable? And I think great business models they meet the criteria of those three aspects of desirability, feasibility, and viability. But scalability then is something that's explained by the interaction and the details of all these three combined. So with this as a background information, let's now dive in a little bit deeper to understand some key characteristics of developing business opportunities towards a scale-up potential. And for that, I just would like to show you this picture first. This is maybe well known to you. Many of you perhaps have an engineering background, and I believe actually coming from a NASA environment, there's this process or this procedure or steps of technology readiness levels, where basic technology is developed step by step and tested more and more thoroughly towards levels of implementation in real life. And inspired by that, we also have, from a more business point of view, we have a similar model with the similar look and feel, which we come to label investment readiness levels. And it's designed in this way just to make sure that engineers, and perhaps also you, understand this process better and better, because it kind of reflects the same kind of language, the same kind of terminology and visuals. And that's really important, because technology readiness is really, at the end of the day, a key criterion related to the feasibility of an idea. But now investment readiness levels really help you to step by step think about the desirability and the viability as well of your idea. So this is a structured approach to also what Andreas mentioned earlier about developing those business models. And in reality, no startup journey will be linear, but we do know more and more what kind of steps or criteria you have to meet in order to successfully launch and scale your business. And so this will never be a guarantee for success, but it will definitely increase the chances of you being successful. And the nice thing is that, you see at the bottom, a model that also Andreas mentioned. So it's really something that some tools and techniques that we're having that help you to develop your toolbox and your capabilities to do it yourself. You will receive some coaching on the go. And as we will develop your opportunity, we can definitely coach you and help you with the relevant steps for wherever you are in this process. And I think the main takeaway, which I can also relate to a real life example from space industry, is this one, is that in parallel, any business coming from a technical background, specifically from the space industry as well, you need in parallel processes of technical validation, technology readiness, but also the market or the business model validation. So this is a picture actually that's coming from our medical school. So in our center, we're also coaching researchers and professors from the medical school here in Rotterdam with commercializing and creating businesses around their IP. And this is what the tech transfer office of our university has developed as a picture, just to remind the engineers or the technical researchers from the very fact that these two processes need to be ongoing in parallel. And what we see from reality is that if you don't follow a setup like this, chances are you really delay your process, or even at the end of the day, we'll see your project falter. So the example that I was thinking of was a startup from the space industry as well. And that company, if we would look at this picture again, was very successful in the early stage, in the beginning stages of this process. There was some interest from farmers in space data. And so this gave the entrepreneurs coming from the space industry some impression and some first evidence that actually they were having something desirable. They were facing a customer problem, and they had a solution for it. So already quite early in the process, they got interest from investors. They were also looking actively for investors. And given a little bit the traction and the impressive technology and data that they were having, they acquired 1 million euros in investment. So that's really impressive. And that allowed the organization, the startup, to actually get off of the ground. So there was some more money available for developing the technology. There were more opportunities for hiring people, creating a business. And so they were already quite soon developing the company at levels of IRL 7, 8, and 9 in this picture. However, what was really painful for the company to learn after 1 or 2 years was that the initial stages of what you see, for instance, at the third level, problem solution validation, what was really not thorough enough. It was not rigorous enough. There were just some companies, some extreme users, some early innovators, early adopters who really liked what the company was all about. But this was just a very, very tiny part of the total market that the company envisioned. And it turned out, once they already were using all the investments in the company, that the majority of the market, of the potential market, actually wasn't there. Simply there were too many issues, too many concerns, and it was simply not sufficient basis in terms of desirability for the company to be viable. So here you saw an example of a company that rushed through the process, not sufficient enough, and regrettably had to stop the business 2 years down the road, spending more than 1 million in investment. And of course, you can never ever prevent this from happening. But with the benefit of hindsight, once evaluating and reflecting on the journey, the entrepreneurs really found out that they didn't do their homework enough. They didn't try and understand the market well enough, the needs of the market, the specific segments, and that's such a shame. So this is really something that hopefully we can explore together in how to prevent these kind of pitfalls, common pitfalls, in your particular case. So this was just one example that I wanted to show you in relation to these models that also Andreas referred to. So the final thing I wanted to mention was about scale-ups and also the next step. Because in our center, we also do some research into scale-ups in the Netherlands, but also in Europe. And there's always this definitional issue. So one way of looking at it is that a scale-up is really a company that in consecutive years, 3 consecutive years, consistently has at least 20% growth in terms of either employee numbers or turnover. So that's one way of looking at it, and it's definitely, of course, the ultimate success of a startup, that you have this kind of growth, that you maybe you go international, you attract more employees. So that's, of course, also from policymakers' point of view, the ideal type of entrepreneur that you would like to have in your country or area. And also the key thing of scale up that we've come to learn is that these are companies that are expert also in this investment readiness level management. You can call it like that, because successful scale-ups, as I mentioned from the example before, they're very good at understanding the market needs, but also how different segments of the market look like. So they can easily grow from segment to segment. Very few mass markets are very homogeneous. So if you want to go from a startup stage to a scale-up stage and grow very, very fast, it means that you have to be very successful in your marketing and sales effort at the end of the day. So that means almost by definition that you're able to transition from targeting one segment to another segment. So put differently, it means that you have to be able to repeat this search process for a good business model in different parts of the market, because your business model probably will have to change and evolve to fit the needs of different types of users and stakeholders. So there the story is that you have to maintain the ability to learn while you're also more and more executing your business model. And you're already servicing customers, you're already making money, but it's not enough for you to achieve your ultimate success. And yeah, just to work towards a closure, I think really what we're seeing is that, and maybe this applies to many of you, you're not working for a startup company, but you're working for an existing organization. You're working for an organization that has the ambition to become more and more innovative, to maybe repetitively launch new initiatives, put them in the market and scale. So that means that your organization, but also successful scale-ups themselves, at the end of the day, have to develop something that we call this black belt of innovation excellence. And so this goes into topics like leadership, management, and governance of innovation. And just in a nutshell, a couple of things that I wanted to show you, just to give you a teaser of some of the things that we will cover in the program and that we will help you to develop and master yourself. So it would be this. It would be a systematic approach to developing and managing and maintaining and upgrading your innovation competence. Because one of the leadership principles of our business school, as we train leaders, develop leaders in Europe, of corporate Europe, then the principle is really that leadership is about creating a system, a management system, and that leadership is managing this system. And the system has, at least in our context of innovation, has 8 different components to take into account and to understand their interrelationships. The first 3 have to do with why the organization exists, and also how and where, what you want to innovate, and also how much, with what kind of intensity. So it really has to do with where do you want to go, what do you want to contribute to the world, but also provides clarity about what's in scope and what's not in scope. So actually, it's very important to define what's inside the box for innovation. And rather than thinking outside the box, you have to define your focus areas. What kind of topics, what kind of technologies, what kind of application areas do you seek growth? If I look back at the picture of Andreas with the upstream and the downstream, the opportunity areas, you can't focus on everything, right? Because then you don't have any focus at all. So what is your playing field, and how are you going to target your innovation resources to those opportunities? So it's this alignment of where you want to go and what kind of topics, and with the resource that you have available, the budget, the people, the talent, the technologies. So this is a story. This is also a leadership requirement for you to develop this story and this overview, and to inspire also not just your organization or your growing organization, but also stakeholders outside of your company. So just a couple of things there, and maybe this is way too much text, but just showing you that we know actually quite a lot from research how to do that, especially in situations when there is no urgency. Because for organizations to step up innovation and to put that on the top of the agenda, that's very often more likely to happen if there's a crisis, right? If there's an existential crisis and the company has to transform, then innovation or transformation or disruption, is almost by definition on the top of the agenda, because there's no way out. There's a burning platform, so you simply have to change and evolve, otherwise the road stops. The trick obviously is, as leaders of an organization, how can you proactively maybe maintain and improve the existing parts of your organization, but also explore and develop new things so that you're future-proof. And from a leadership point of view, we know quite a few things about how to successfully do that. And one of the key things is actually, managing or developing what we saw on the previous slide. Having a story about your vision, providing clarity about focus areas, and also having the right resources to throw at it. So it's a group effort. It takes a dialogue as a team. It also takes experiments. This third point. So that's really about this investment readiness levels, those tools, techniques, applying that, learning that in an iterative way, but gradually, maturing your ideas along this process. So it's not a side job. So at the end of the day, an organization really needs to turn this into parts of the DNA of the organization. So it's definitely also about the evolution of an innovation culture in the company. So these kind of things is something that we will cover in the program as well. So you can expect some leadership parts of the program, but also relate that to your real life challenge. What does it mean for you in your organization? How are you going to create a movement? How are you going to lead that? Maybe as an informal leader. So that definitely will be part of the program. And I think that's fascinating for all of us to work on that and to develop ourselves in that area. And then finally, just to work towards a closure, make it full circle. So how to do that, how to manage this system. And it really has to do with at least 5 other processes or competencies you need to develop as an organization. So what kind of processes and metrics will you use to develop your ideas and projects? That's actually the investment readiness levels that we were talking about, but also what kind of structure of the organization, what kind of leadership or leadership styles are needed in your organization, and that fit with your vision, etc. And then the final 2, we shouldn't ignore that, open innovation, so how to innovate together with others in an ecosystem. That's also what Miguel mentioned, the co-opetition part, right? How do you collaborate with some stakeholders in your organization, but at the same time, there might be some competitive pressures there. And finally, talent development, because I think the program exists to develop you as participants, but also to help you develop your organization and your colleagues to become more entrepreneurial and more innovative as the business leaders of the future in your industry. So this is just something I wanted to show you as an overall framework that we will use to support you. And maybe that is gradually also a way to turn it back over to Ricardo and also to the audience to see if we have some questions, and we can maybe kickstart some Q&A. So with that, back to you in Portugal.
All right, Ferdinand, thank you so much for your contribution. I thoroughly enjoy the idea that, you can actually, at this day and age, work to scale up a business and look at space as a real market, right? So you can look at it. We were discussing some of the insights that Ferdinand had, and before we go into the Q&A, we have a couple of questions. I think we still have some time. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on
No, very, very interesting, especially because, this is really the output that you want in a program like this, is you participate because you want to understand exactly, okay, I get a bit of tech, I get a bit of research, I get a bit of business models, I understand my market, I understand new markets, I understand the intersections between the different sectors, and suddenly I start seeing, okay, where are the opportunities? Where's the new business? Where are the niches that I can put my bet and really go for it? Because in the end, you want to find that specific thing that nobody is really watching and then scale it very quickly. And so what Ferdinand was talking about, it's one of the outputs that really people that will do this program can get from doing the program.
Yeah, and then going into the questions that came up, and I would definitely put them out there before we go into the closing stage. And this is for you, Ferdinand and Andy. One of the questions was, how can the Space for Business program help me launch or scale a venture that is focusing on the space industry? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Andy, do you want to start? Yeah.
Sure. I think the program will give you, first of all, an overview of opportunities, and you will be in a discussion and learn about not only yourself and with the lecturers, but also with the peers in the program, you probably be enlightened and learn a lot about different opportunities. I think that's a very creative group of people which will be together. But what we will do is we give you the tools, and we try to explain you the tools to be successful and to actually venture into new opportunities. That's maybe the main takeaway of the program. And we do that from all the different aspects. And I liked Ferdinand's graph. He showed the last graph where we put all together, whether it's leadership, whether it's human resources, whether it's the capability of innovating, whether it's the organization and the business model, which just give you the right tools to shape your organization to be capable to venture into new markets and ideas.
Yeah, very good. I mean, totally agree. And I think there's a great opportunity here to really combine even the people that will attend. They will probably be from different sectors. So you might have in the room a person from energy, another from healthcare, another from agriculture, and understanding all these sectors and seeing how space tech can actually create even maybe new business models or new sectors or new sources of revenue for your own company, and then sharing that among the students might lead to new business for yourself and for your company. So very interesting.
Burton, you want to add on top of that?
Yeah, just a few things, and also maybe also in relation to the question that's coming in the Q&A part. The first what I would like to add is to also what Andy said is really also making you aware of the complex ecosystem probably that's relevant for your opportunity to fly. Very often it's indeed this complexity that's involved. So that means that there are different players involved, but each with their own interests, and it has much more to do with the motivation of people, with the emotions of people as well, with the desires of people than just the technology or the function of your solution. So one of the things that you will learn in the program as well is to also understand the motivations of people and just to empathize with people, to talk to them, to learn from them in the right way, to really understand actually what it is that you're doing. Because very often entrepreneurs don't really, they know their product, but then actually don't really understand in detail what they're solving. And very often has to do with the social part, the emotional part of the people involved in adopting and purchasing the product or service.
Yeah, and if I can add on this point, I think one of the points that's also very interesting is you might know very well the product, but you don't know where's the biggest pain that product is actually solving. And so you're trying to find out which area, which industry is actually really interesting for that pain. Who's the guy, the company, the market that will pay now for your product? It might not be the one that you're thinking you're selling to. It might be something else, and that search is so important.
No, absolutely, and it's a great segue as well to our next question, which is, if you're currently working in a large corporation, you're entrepreneurial, so you want to make an impact on the way business is being developed, say within the insurance sector or even banking. How can you tap into the space frontier as an opportunity? Even building a new revenue stream for the company or exploring. How can you do that? And by using the program that we're discussing, Space for Business. I mean,
Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe one thing to add, because this also relates to the first question that comes in of the in the Q&A. I don't know the exact name of the participant who contributed this question, but thank you so much. Referring to the particular things of the space industry, how can we apply the tools, techniques from our program to this specific setting? So also, Ricardo, what you mentioned, suppose you are working in this corporate and you want to tap into the opportunities coming from the space industry. Yes, definitely. The space industry, without a doubt, and it has its own particularities. And probably within that, there's so many different parts that are unique in and of themselves, without a doubt. But at the same time, I think we can say with confidence that what we bring to the table from, let's say, the management schools and the business schools and the leadership and knowledge that we have, how to develop that, is is by now more and more validated from many different settings. Like I speak from my own experience that the basic things that I've just at high level showed you in my presentation. And the same goes for my colleagues here tonight. I've trained and coached startups from numerous, countless, dozens of types of industries. And every industry participant says, yeah, but we are from the medicine. We are from we're from a non-profit organization. We are from banking. We are from this or that. And that's all true. And I think the key thing is in our program, we bring those basic principles and we help you to apply it together with your peers to your particular context. Because at the end of the day, at the detailed level, nobody knows. There's uncertainty, there's ambiguity. So it needs reflection, it needs the right models to think through these challenges. And hopefully as a program, together with your colleagues in the room, we can help you to make better decisions. And again, we can't guarantee you'll be successful, but we're for sure that you will develop yourself and in the same time that you will increase the chances of success.
Yeah. Do you want to add on that, Andy, or?
No, I'm fully agree, and I think, as I said, the tools or the experiences we have from different industries, from applying our knowledge from management into different industries, is what is probably what we can deliver, and together with the participants and the team in the program, we can develop and apply that into the right context. I think that's very important. So from this perspective, I think it's also important to bring in topics. Bring in, the participants are an important part of this program. They are not just there to listen. They are there to work with us and to bring in their ideas and their topics and their challenges, so we can actually take it up and help by using the management tools we have to actually deliver on the space industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you haven't had a chance to check out spaceforbusiness.eu or get to know more about the program, it's designed to have 3 physical presential modules, starting with St. Gallen's, led by Andy that you just saw on the screen. And then we're coming in right here into the campus of Nova School of Business and Economics in Lisbon. And Miguel, who was here on stage with us, is leading the academic side of that part. And then the very last one will happen in Rotterdam, together with Ferdinand and René and another of our colleagues. And after that, we will have also a module that will happen at ESA. So the European Space Agency is going to happen there. You're telling us that there's another question. Do we want to see what the last one is so that we can wrap up? So we're being asked if we intend to have any scholarships for the program. If so, what would be their value and how can one apply? Thank you for the question. What I would definitely invite you to do is just drop us an email or through the web side of the program. We can definitely reply. I mean, we're trying to make sure that we have some level of scholarships based on merit, relevance, as Andy was saying. The participants and the group of participants, especially on this very first edition of Space for Business, will be pivotal to enrich the experience.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, not only are we doing this presentially, but we're bridging the time between each physical module with master classes online. There will be a project that will be carried across the whole length of the 6-month program, and you can bring your own projects. So we want to make sure that we select the participants that will bring value to everyone else in the classroom. So please be specific on what the value that you would bring to the group. What would you like to take from the program and how your contribution would be, and we will be happy to look at the application and the details. I don't know if we want to leave a few last words, Ricardo, because we're running out of time.
Yeah, just want to say thank you so much for attending. This is going to be an amazing program. And so if you're interested in space, if you're interested in doing business in space, come to this program. It's going to be amazing. Amazing faculty, amazing teachings, and I'm sure the final result will be great for you.
Yeah, and we're getting a lot of support from the national space agencies. I mean, the program is endorsed by Portugal Space, the Air Center, a lot of friends. I mean, I've known Ricardo for years and years, and we've come together at this moment in time just to be involved in this. Is just such a joy. Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, Ferdinand, for your contribution. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you to all of you to stay with us. We would just encourage you to look at this as just the beginning of a brand new adventure. Stay tuned to our social media. Please follow us. Any of the schools that you see on the screen has a strong social media feed, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on. We encourage you to follow, learn more about the opportunities that are coming up. We will be publishing over the next couple of weeks some of the updates on the program. It's starting in late November in Switzerland, coming over to Portugal at the beginning of 2022, and finishing around springtime between Rotterdam and ESA, the European Space Agency campus there in the Netherlands. So it will be a huge thrill to have you on board. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
stay
much.
tuned. All right. Thank you,
you.
Ricardo. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.